Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to COVID Cut. Oh my God, it's echoing like hell in this bitch. So, this is the final episode, which means I'm finished with the cut. This has been an absolutely insane 12 weeks. During this whole pandemic, I've managed to lose just about 14 pounds in total, which is quite a lot because I didn't think I had 14 pounds to lose. There's been a lot of hurdles in the way, however, we have managed to get it done, and it is now time to show the results.
Where's your head at with this? Move close to him. Don't wash around without you, baby. My plans still need all changing. For you instead. Don't wash around without you, baby.
Boys and girls, wowzer. Okay, so you can see on the left we've got footage from the 17th of April, which was the start of my 12-week cut. Then on the right we've got my final physique update from the 9th of July. My starting weight was 173.6 pounds and I finished off at 159.8 pounds. Last week I weighed in at 159 pounds flat, which was the lowest weight of the cut. However, I had to increase my calories for a couple of days between that weigh-in and the final weigh-in because I had to complete a fitness test and needed some more energy. The very low calorie diet was causing me to be very lethargic, and I needed to ensure that my glycogen stores were full and I had plenty of energy for the fitness test because I couldn't afford to fail it. So my weight rose up to 161.8 pounds. So then in the following few days I dropped 2 pounds of what I gained back for the fitness tests. Progress wise, I'm really happy with what I've achieved. So considering that I drank alcohol, I had barbecues, I didn't have access to a gym, and I've achieved all of this during a pandemic, I'd say I've done pretty well, not to mention all the other things that I've had going on. Now, my scales say that I went from 12.5% body fat to 9.9%. The lowest reading in terms of body fat was 9.7%. However, bioelectrical impedance isn't very accurate, and I'd actually say I started off more at like 14% body fat and ended up at around 8%. Now, I lost 13.8 pounds in total to the end date. So let's just round that to 14 pounds for easy maths. 14 pounds would be the equivalent to 8% of my total starting body weight that I lost during this cut. So assuming that 75% of the weight I lost came from body fat, the other 25% coming from lean mass, that would be a deduction of 6% in body fat. So that would take me from 14% body fat to 8%. According to my scales, I'd have only lost 2.6% body fat, which would be 4.5 pounds. So that would mean that I've lost almost 10 pounds in lean mass, which definitely hasn't happened. The most important figure to monitor this progress would be the weight, and I think it's clearly visible that I've lost more body fat than muscle by just comparing the start and end physiques. Right then, here is a visual representation, a graph of my weight loss throughout the 12 weeks that I was doing the cut for. Now, you'll notice that the weight loss wasn't linear. You don't just lose fat every single day for 12 weeks. That's not how it happens. You have lots of peaks and lots of troughs. Now, you'll even notice a week, 2 weeks in, there were points where my weight spiked to higher than a starting point. And now, you've got to expect this. Your weight isn't just built up of your muscle mass and your body fat. There are lots more factors at play. So you've got to take into consideration things like water retention due to maybe sodium, due to carbohydrate intake. You've got to take into consideration the exercise that you're doing, how much you're sweating, are you passing your stools, sorry for the grossness. There are many, many things that can factor your weight. Your weight is just your relationship with gravity. Now then, let's talk about how I actually did it. Let's look at my nutrition. So first off, I started with a calorie deficit. In order for you to lose fat, it's a simple maths equation. You've got to expend more calories than you consume. So I chose a deficit of 500 calories per day. Now, in order to know what your deficit is, in order for you to know how many calories you actually burn in a day, you're going to have to find out your total daily energy expenditure. I'll put a link in the bio to one that you can go and use. Your total daily energy expenditure takes into consideration things like height, weight, activity level, what type of job you have, how active you are, things like that, how many times a week you are exercising. You get the gist. So it'll give you a number, and that is your maintenance. Now from there you need to deduct 500 calories, which will give you your calorie deficit. Why choose a deficit of 500 calories? Basically, in 1 pound of fat there are 3,500 calories. 500 calories times by 7 days of the week is 3,500, so you should then be on track to lose 1 pound of fat per week, which is a safe amount of fat to be losing without putting your muscle mass at risk too much. So how long should you stay at your 500 calorie deficit for? Well, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Stick at your 500 calorie deficit until your weight loss stagnates or really slows down. So when you get to a point where you are not losing half a pound per week or more, then you want to sort of look at either increasing activity or decreasing calorie consumption. So from there, if my weight loss got to a point where I was not losing half a pound per week, I would increase my calorie deficit by 200. So that deficit, the original deficit of 500, now increases to 700, or I increase my steps by 1,000. Macronutrients. Macronutrients are what make calories. So there are 4 calories in a gram of protein, 4 calories in a gram of carbs, and 9 calories in a gram of fat. Protein is the most important macronutrient in terms of body composition, so protein is going to help you keep hold of as much of your muscle as possible. In order for you to maintain or even build muscle, it's recommended that you consume somewhere between 0.8 and 1.2 grams of protein per pound of your lean body mass. So what I did in this circumstance was simply apply 1 gram of protein per pound of my actual body mass, so I know that I was getting more than enough protein while I was in my calorie deficit. So I was doing everything that I could nutrition wise to keep hold of that muscle mass. In terms of dietary fats, you want half the amount of fats as you have protein, so that's 0.5 grams of fats per pound of your body mass. Keep it simple. If you prefer to eat more protein or more fats, that's absolutely fine, and then just fill in the remainder of the calories with the carbohydrates. Now, when people think of calorie deficits, nutrition plans, fat loss and all that jazz, they think of boring foods. They think of chicken and rice and broccoli 3 times a day for 12 weeks, which is not ideal. And I'm telling you, that is not adherable. Adherable? Is adherable a word? You can't adhere to it, basically. It's not sound. You should stick to your usual diet plan as much as you possibly can. So whatever you usually eat, the foods that you like to eat, the meals you like to make on a daily basis, keep them as similar as you can. All you need to do is alter the amounts of everything in the meals. So for instance, if you like eating pad thai, which I like, I just decreased the amount of noodles, increased the amount of chicken, made sure that my macros hit my total macros for the day, and hey presto, that helped me to adhere to my diet for 12 weeks. Choose meals that you like eating. I even had like multiple barbecues, I drank alcohol, and all you have to do in that circumstance is factor it in before you go and do it. So I knew that on the weekend I'd be going out and going to have a barbecue and drinking loads of beers. So I found the beer with the smallest amount of calories in, so I drank Bud Light. I factored in 12 of them, which was something like 950 calories, which was an awful lot of my calories, but it still gave me enough calories to hit my protein target, so I was willing to make that sacrifice. So all I did then was, with the remaining 1,000 or so calories that I had, I allocated them to like 250 grams of protein, which is plenty of meat. So it just meant that my diet for the day wasn't exactly amazing in terms of full of micronutrients, and it wasn't very broad, but it meant that I could enjoy drinking 12 beers and then eating all the food that I wanted on the barbecue later. So it's just about weighing up the sort of macronutrients, weighing up the calories and everything, and eating what you actually enjoy eating, factoring everything in. I have always and will always preach that you don't have to sacrifice the enjoyable aspects of your life in order to achieve your body composition and fitness goals. You don't have to give up alcohol, you don't have to give up carbohydrates, you don't have to give up anything. You can eat anything, drink anything in moderation. As long as you stay in your calorie deficit while you're continuing a cut, you can eat anything that you want. Now then, in terms of training, you shouldn't change much at all. You don't need to decrease the weight, you don't need to up the repetitions. God, I'm just going to keep that in. You don't need to up the repetitions, you don't need to lower the weight. You should keep things as similar as possible. Your goal is to maintain as much muscle mass as possible while you're in a calorie deficit. So if you start to lift lighter weights and then do more repetitions, you're not giving your muscles that stimulus, so that you'll be more likely to then lose the muscle that you've got. So the advice when it comes to training is try and stick to progressive overload as much as you can. Only decrease your weight that you're lifting when you absolutely have to because you are weaker, but still use progressive overload, still lift heavy weights, still do resistance training. That part of the whole circumstance should not change. Now in my circumstance, it was very hard for me to use progressive overload and to stick to weights that I was lifting beforehand. In fact, it was impossible because I didn't have access to a gym. I was in my house. I had two 15kg dumbbells, a 37.5kg barbell, and I had to do absolutely everything with those things. So in that circumstance, I had to increase my time under tension and find ways to make exercises harder. Gyms are opening very soon, so hopefully you won't have that issue when you're following out a cut in the future. You'll be able to just stick to your usual weights and all of the machines, etc. that you use in the gym. However, if you are still within this pandemic and you are quarantining or whatever, and you haven't got access to an awful lot of equipment, you're going to have to just find ways to push yourself to a point of near failure, not absolute failure, but near failure, and try to use progressive overload by whatever means possible. So that's by using bodyweight exercises and adding things to your body to make you heavier each set and each time that you do it, because that way you'll give yourself the best chance at maintaining all of that muscle mass. So with my resistance training, I followed a 5-day split. I did legs, push, pull, legs, upper, and then I took the weekend off. In terms of cardio, I did a mixture of running and cycling, but I only did that because my step count dropped dramatically. Prior to quarantining, my step count was between 8,000 and 10,000 steps per day. During quarantine, my step count dropped to somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 per day. So that meant that I had to increase my activity level when I started my cut. So I was doing 3 cardio sessions per week, but not an awful lot. And in usual circumstances, I wouldn't have. I'd have just continued to do those steps if I could. So my advice to you is whatever steps you're doing at the moment, keep them like that. Just do your resistance training, and then when it gets to a point where your calorie deficit isn't doing anything, increase your steps by 1,000 or decrease your calories. Don't worry about cardio.
Where's your head at with this? Move close and hang